Animism might be able to cure us of conspiracy theories. My name is Rune Hjarnø. I'm a historian of religion, and I'll explain why in this video. Animism enables people to perceive personality and intention, importantly, in events. Stuff that happens doesn't just happen to the animist. Animists typically perceive events not just as something, but rather a meeting or an engagement almost with someone. But in the modern reality, that imposes on us this sort of distinction of rupture from this meeting. Modernity teaches us there isn't a spirit in the tree. Events aren't inhabited by personal intention. But the human mind still needs this personal intention, particularly when something startling happens, like the death of Princess Diana or 9/11 or COVID-19. So where does the human mind and intelligence go when our normal analysis of the world has been stifled in this way by modernity telling us that there isn't any personal intention in the spread of COVID-19? It's just a virus. It's almost like the size of a molecule, has no more intention than a handful of Lego bricks or something. Where does the human mind go then in order to understand the intention in the coronavirus? Well, it goes into a space cadet shuttle, and then it shoots off towards a Beta Centauri star cluster by creating these weird and self-defeating fantasies about human agents engineering the events. That is conspiracy theories. And this is also why I think that animism or healthy animist patterns may contribute to curing us of this horrid bug in our intelligence circuits. But conspiracy theories aren't a new thing. They've been with us for a while, and I won't go through all the detail of the history, but it's mostly when someone wants to be assholes to someone else. For instance, the Romans, they wanted to target Christians, so they disseminated ideas that Christians sacrificed children in cruel rituals. King Edward I of England had incurred debts with a Jewish tradesman, and his natural response was to disseminate the idea that Jews sacrificed children in cruel rituals, for instance. And this led to pogroms and the 12th century expulsion of the Jews from England. But this kind of thinking can move into rather unsuspected places, in fact, and it often rests on this particular kind of rejection of information and in order to establish parallel realities. For instance, in the 1970s, socialists really wanted to believe that the Soviet Union was saving all of us, so they disseminated the idea that information in standard media was just engineered propaganda. In the 1990s and early 2000s, capitalists really wanted to believe that capitalism was saving all of us, so they disseminated the idea that scientific consensus on climate change was really engineered propaganda. And there's even a case where, take this, I'm not making this up, I promise you, Swedish radical feminists really wanted to believe that heterosexual men are inherently evil and derive perverse sexual satisfaction from torturing and hurting women. So they disseminated the idea that there are secret cults of men sacrificing young women in cruel rituals. And they really believed this stuff. People in quite high places ended up believing that stuff. Conspiracy theories are upheld by an enormous capacity to reject sanity. You cannot argue against conspiracy believers because then you're clearly duped by the web of lies spun by the anthropomorph space lizards, or worse, you are in fact perhaps one of them. I'm probably going to be accused of being a space lizard now myself. And yeah, space lizards, that comes from the conspiracy theorist David Icke, who has the idea that world history is controlled by a conspiracy of space lizards that have morphed into human form. Is pretty cuckoo. The conspiracy theory conveniently ignores what anybody with a modicum of historical understanding knows, and that is that close to nothing that happens in the real world can really remain a secret for very long. Of course, it's not unambiguous. Sometimes there are secrets, but generally no. And certainly not the implementation of such elaborate and complex machinations and plots as often envisioned by the conspiracy believer. So if you want to do something morally reprehensible and you're a politician, the first thing you have to do is to say it, which is exactly what most politicians do if they want to be assholes, basically. So, but conspiracy believers don't understand this. Does this impossible invisibility of the conspiracy's devious workings not just prove how universally pervasive it is? Does it not exactly affirm that it's everywhere, in the air we breathe and behind every webcam and so on? But there's a thing about conspiracy theories that just cracks me up. And that is the way that their emotional appeal seems to directly conflict with their central claim, actually. The conspiracy believer typically sees himself, I think it's mostly hymns, as these clandestine resistance keyboard warriors, proudly defiant bannermen of the truth that they are programming the rest of us against. However, when you look at the pretty cataclysmic dystopia that is our age, how can you look at this and not deeply long for conspiracy theories to actually be true? I mean, just imagine a world run by some council of hyper-intelligent, humanist, possibly Jewish, egghead gentlemen linked with philanthropes such as George Soros and possibly the UN. I mean, this is actually a quite utopian scenario. And this is part of the real secret to why conspiracy theories are so incredibly appealing. They pose as rebelliously clandestine insights, but they really serve as a deep consolation to the believer by assuring the believer that there is intelligence involved in the management of the world. And the problems that are here are existentially manageable, right? That's a consolation that conspiracy theories give, right? Is it a problem that hothouse Earth will disrupt agricultural patterns and create hundreds of millions of refugees within the next generation? Oh no, not at all. The real problem is clearly chemtrails, the lines that airplanes draw on the sky, which according to some conspiracy theories does something evil to all of us. Is it a problem that a virus is spreading and destabilizing the whole Western world, threatening to plunge the United States even further into neo-fascism from the present sad state of Donald Trump's sort of buffoonocracy there? Oh no, not at all. That's just what they want you to believe. The real problem is that somebody is asking you to wear a tiny paper mask. Now, who wouldn't want to believe this? That our most serious problem is the threat to civil liberties posed by little paper masks, not climate change. I would like to believe that, totally. I would live my bourgeois little life and have sex with my little old ladies on Fridays and barbecue pork chops on Saturdays and tire my friends with endless sermons about how the real problem in the world is that Princess Diana was killed by Zionist space lizards. This thinking is infantile and is motivated by a craving for a safe and stable world that does not exist. So please take the adult choice and wake the fuck up. There is no intelligence whatsoever involved in the management of this world. Had there been intelligence even remotely involved, then someone would have gotten CO2 emissions and climate change under control 30 years ago. Revised capitalism with sustainability, and how can a phenomenon such as Donald Trump even exist in a world that has any interface with intelligent management? Really? Of course not. Now, but of course it's also important to say that criticizing conspiracy theories doesn't imply canceling social critiques, right? It's evident that power is problematic. Of course it is. It's often not yielded to the benefit of the people. It often imposing intransparency on the operations of power and so on. However, note how the morally abject aspects of how power is operated today are pretty well known, really. If you go into what is openly stated from think tanks and politicians about declaring these idiotic wars all the time, dismantling welfare and human rights, and all the stuff that's widely known about intransparency, abuse of power, insane levels of surveillance by big tech companies, breaks in constitutional laws, and so on. If you look at all that openly stated, then who needs space lizards? Conspiracy theories, and this is a problem. The problem why I'm a little bit angry with conspiracy theories is that they divert attention and urgently necessary activist resistance away from real shit that human actors are openly stating that they're doing. But interesting thing about conspiracy theories in relation to animism is the way that they think about intention in events. And this is a logic which is well known from anthropology. When the early British anthropologist Evans Pritchard looked at how the Central African Asande reasoned around a catastrophic event, then he found that they needed a culprit. So they used their notion of witchcraft to explain how someone's intention and agency had caused the catastrophic event, right? And this is where conspiracies take off. The conspiracy believer sees an event like 9/11 and asks, cui bono? Who benefited from this? He then looks for the guilty among those governments and agencies who, following on 9/11, proceeded to exploit the event to dismantle civil and human rights and lead wars and colonize oil fields and expand government control at the expense of basic rights and liberties of humanist democracies and so on. And the conspiracy theorist rightly observes that these agents used the 9/11 event for their purpose. So he sort of concludes that their intention seems to inhabit the event. They must have somehow wanted it, since it ended up being so useful for them in being assholes to people, basically. Ergo, they made it happen. Now, in animist realities, this kind of analysis is an ever-present part of human life. Life's events are caused by forces other than human, and this doesn't just count for catastrophic events, but certainly also for positive events. A god can lead a person towards a career. A spirit can protect you or give you a voice. Divination is typically a tool to sort of read and understand this aspect of what happens. Tarot cards, reading burnt bones, rune castings, Ifakari readings, and so on. These are tools to discover and engage subjectivity in events. And we have an instinctual propensity to analyze and engage other than human subjectivity that is immanent in our reality with intention. When we've found our way in life, we analyze this and read the intention in it, and we conclude that Freya, Ogun, Jesus, or the bear spirit has helped us, perhaps getting a new job or finding a new boyfriend. We give thanks to the other than human, and then the relation is enforced, and the intention, and thereby the subjectivity of the other than human, is made even more immanent or materialized in the events. Now, conspiracy theories are driven by this instinct to look for personality in events. And this is also why they often lean very heavily on polytheist realities. So conspiracy theories are often going on about the Mesopotamian Anunnaki gods, and they were really the original alien conspiracy, or other figures such as the B'nai Elohim of the Bible, those sons of gods descending in the Genesis, or the strange figures on Maya reliefs carved in the ruins of Palenque. And these all show animist perceptions of powerful being having contact with humanity, and the conspiracy theory is sort of using that to sort of affirm the idea of powerful human constellations or alien lizard constellations, whatever they are. Yeah. And in prehistory, there's a lot of weird stuff. There's a lot of weird figurations and so on. And conspiracy theories are often looking at these. And whenever the conspiracy theories see something that's really weird, then it becomes an affirmation of the theory. Conspiracy theories are, in a sense, animism out of place. It's animism that has gone bananas. And that's why I suspect that conspiracy theories are a problem that sort of springs from this divide from the world that modernity creates, where the sphere of meaning, intention, and personhood is closed inside, encased inside the human being, and divided from this exterior, dead, material world, right? So, so instead of creating an animist relation to the world by allowing us to engage other than human motivations in the world, the conspiracy theory creates these three completely freewheeling postulates about human actors politically engineering the absolutely incoherent events of our sadly very chaotic world. And yeah, so this is why I think that healthy patterns of animism ought to be able to contribute at least to curing us of conspiracy theories. You know, animism is the capacity to perceive intentionality and subjectivity inherent in the material world, instead of some gibberish about, you know, human constellations of politically motivated scientists creating impossibly elaborate secret schemes to rationally engineer events that are clearly 100% devoid of human rationality. Right? I'm going to give you an example of how more organic, I would say natural or functional human animism works in the reading of intention and subjectivity in events. West Africa in the 19th century. European colonizers brought to West Africa a weapon that has been named the greatest killer in history, smallpox, the disease smallpox. Now try to think about this for a moment from the perspective of West Africans. This very violent condition was brought there by people who looked kind of different from them, who visibly came on big boats, people who did extremely destructive things in West Africa, inciting wars between states and bought off so many enslaved people that whole areas got depopulated and so on. And this area actually became known as the Slave Coast because of this. But West Africans had, and actually still have, very, very healthy and functional animist ways of relating to the world. So they didn't primarily just create some hula bula about the event being engineered by human agents, like contemporary Westerners are doing so intensively with the COVID-19, the spread of the COVID-19. Maybe such ideas were there as well, to some extent. I mean, things aren't unambiguous, and such ideas could have been there. But it's remarkable that it wasn't the main thing. It wasn't the main way that they read intention in the smallpox event, in spite of the fact that a foreign force had landed like actual almost aliens, you know, and the disease came from there. These people were able to see, well, Europeans also got smallpox and died from it. So it wasn't like something that they were cooking up in a laboratory or something like that, you know. So so the way that these West African animists read the intention in the smallpox epidemics is, I think, more real, more true somehow, and stronger. It's a stronger analysis. They perceived subjectivity inside the spread of the smallpox. They still looked for perceived the intention in it, and they gave it a name, Sakpata, the god of smallpox. And then people could relate with it. Sakpata's power could even be yielded by human magicians, and this deity, who then got a lot of other names through history, Babalu, Obaluaye, Omolu, and so on, Shopona. This deity changed through history and also became a god of healing. So humans are relating with this very drastic event in a way that's very existentially useful when they when they read the intention and the subjectivity in the smallpox epidemics in this way. And this is what I would suggest thinking in relation with animism and conspiracy theories. I think Amazonian shamans and West African diviners could really give us the kind of explanations for something like COVID-19 or even 9/11 that would enable us to understand these events in a much, much better, more natural and more existentially useful way by relating to them and building relation to them rather than just showering them in nonsense that is, built to create really unfortunate and unkind interactions between humans. Yeah, that was a little thing about animism and conspiracy theories. You can follow my work on this channel, and I'm also Patreon support me if you want. I'm mainly working on how to read Nordic history of religions from the perspective of new animist theory, thereby seeing it as a kind of Euro-tech, Euro-traditional ecological knowledge. Yes, so thank you very much and see you around.